My partner is a professional videographer, and she is going to record this, if you don't mind.
That's absolutely okay
Okay.
with me, sir. So, good afternoon, and I'm sorry I'm sitting in a forest, so my light could be a little tricky, and I hope my internet connectivity lasts me as long as I should need it.
Right.
So,
I'm so
uh,
happy. I'm so happy that you're in a forest. I wish I were in a forest.
I make it a point to be in the forest as long as it is possible. I think by being there, I think I'll be able to at least safeguard the forest, because when I'm here, people know it that I'm here, and they at least don't try to harm anything growing in the
Right.
forest.
Right.
So
Good.
that's the least that I can do, and that's the least that I'm trying to do. But thank you very much, uh, Professor Macpherson. Would you mind if I call you Guy, or
Not
how do I call you?
not at all. You can call me Guy. You can call me any number of things, and I guarantee you I've been called worse.
Uh, but I'm very thankful to you, sir. You accepted my request, and I was, let me give you a brief background as to why did I even attempt to connect to you. I was reading all sorts of things, IPCC reports and all the standard reports, and I started feeling that there's something not right about all these reports. They are trying to, uh, put a lot of mask onto the reality. My friends got to a place which is in Himalayas this year, just last month, and they had been there 10 years ago, and they gave me this information that when they went there 10 years ago, it was very, very cold. And when they went there last month, it was so hot that it was unbearable. So, I mean, within a decade, a place in Himalayas could get so hot. It means that there is something definitely not right, and which is not coming out into all these reports, these respectable reports from these United Nations and all these IPCCs of this world. And so I started making, trying to find out, are there any people, those who are having a different point of view than these reports? And look what, I bumped into you. And I said, oh man, it seems that this professor is absolutely talking the kind of stuff that I think I don't want to hear, but I know that I should hear them. And so, in a ziffy, I sent out a message to you, and because I saw Kevin sitting with you, and I got his email address as well. So I sent out to him as well, so that perhaps with him I could get your contact. And I have been lucky. I not only got a response from you, but from Kevin as well, and he chipped in for me, send in some good words for me to you too. So it was all very beautiful. And the link that you sent me, I read it, and it is terrible. I must tell you, the situation is terrible. So we, as a newspaper, we have been uh, publishing a lot of IPCC's reports,
Mm-hmm.
but I thought it's high time that I should publish something which is not IPCC, which is raw but which is correct. And even if it is not looking beautiful, even if it is ugly, I think my 70 million plus readers must know it. So I will shut up now, and I would like to hear from you, you know, most terrible news that you have, that all of us must be paying a lot of attention to, whether we are rich or whether we are poor, irrespective. Over to you, sir.
Well, first of all, even the peer-reviewed journal literature, which tends to be very conservative, even the peer-reviewed journal literature concluded with a paper in The Lancet Planetary Health, authored by 69 different scholars. They concluded that more than 5 million people a year are dying as a result of what they call non-optimal temperatures. This paper was released on July 1st, 2021. So we know that the situation is terrible, that people are dying around the world. It's worse than that, of course. We go back to a paper in the renowned Science Advances peer-reviewed journal from May 8th, 2020. It's called The Emergence of Heat and Humidity Too Severe for Human Tolerance. And that's exactly what they point out. Heat and humidity combine to produce what's called lethal wet bulb temperatures. And it's already happening around the world. That was in 2020, and it takes many months, sometimes up to a couple of years, to have a paper published in the peer-reviewed literature. So already people are dying as a result of excessively high temperatures and the high humidity. And nowhere is that more evident than in your country. India, because of the Himalayas blocking cold air from the north, India is at ground zero for high temperatures and high humidities, which are combining to cause the death of many people. And you don't read much about it in the corporate media. Most people refer to it as the mainstream media. I think it's more honest to call it the corporate media. It's corporate media. These are corporate media outlets. They make money through advertising, and they are not in the business of telling the truth, because that would scare away readers and advertisers. You're never going to get the full story from the New York Times or the Washington Post, because they're in business to make money. That's why they exist. A couple of years ago, in the Journal of Applied Physiology, this paper came out January 28th, 2022. Sorry, it wasn't a couple of years ago. It was just a couple of months ago. And this paper evaluated the 35-degree wet bulb temperature adaptability. And it's been assumed for a very long time that at 35 degrees wet bulb temperature, meaning at 35 degrees Celsius and 100% relative humidity, that the body is overcome, the human body is overcome, and organ failure begins. Of course, at higher temperatures, lower relative humidities are required. What they found in this paper from just a few months ago in the Journal of Applied Physiology, again a peer-reviewed article, written by 4 scholars, they found that much lower temperatures and lower humidities were required to cross a threshold in young, healthy subjects. They worked only with young, healthy humans, and even under those conditions, organ failure began at well below what people had assumed for a very long time was the lethal wet bulb temperature of 35 degrees. It's much lower than that, even with healthy individuals. So the situation is far worse than any of us has been told. And the situation is not getting any better, as you point out, with what's going on in India and other places around the world. Tropical and subtropical areas around the world are rapidly losing habitat for humans right now. It's been going on for a few years. It's been reported for a few years. It's probably been going on for several years. We have crossed this threshold beyond which humans are able to adapt and survive at the places around the globe that have harbored humans for many generations of humans, literally decades of humans living in these areas, able to grow their own food, persist, have children, carry out their lives as we consider normal. That's been going on in these places for generations. And now, within the last several years, maybe within the last couple of decades, this is no longer the case. Suddenly, quite abruptly, it's become too hot and too humid to support habitat for human animals. That's the take-home message. It's a terrible situation. I don't see any way that it's going to get better. I see a lot of ways that it could get worse. I've published 2 peer-reviewed articles in the last 2 years, which is astonishing because I haven't made a dime for 13 years. And I'm still publishing the peer-reviewed literature and pointing out how dire the situation is and how quickly our species could go extinct as a result of these contributors to loss of habitat for human animals. And that's really the bottom line. This can happen very quickly. It's a process that is already underway. Already many people are dying around the world, and I don't see any way of it getting better for one reason. There is a way out. The Mere Reflection Framework, which you can find at meer.org, MEER.org. That framework offers the ability to reflect back incoming sunlight before it has an opportunity to warm the planet. Therefore, before the greenhouse gases can trap that heat and hold it to the earth. That framework was developed by Dr. Ye Tao at the Roland Institute at Harvard University, and it offers what I believe is the only way to retain habitat for humans over the course of the next few years, and that's only if we implement it right away. Like, I would feel a lot better had we implemented it a decade ago, or 5 years ago, or 2 years ago. But in the spirit of not giving up on habitat for our species, I think it's important to point out that this is potentially a path forward that is positive. Also bear in mind that we've been sold the idea that 2 degrees C is some sort of benchmark beyond which we cannot pass. And that's not the case. It was in October of 1985 that the Advisory Group on Greenhouse Gases, the precursor to the IPCC, in their last year of existence, 1985, this was in October of 1985, the Advisory Group on Greenhouse Gases pointed out that 1 degree C is the absolute upper limit. In fact, climate writer and speaker David Spratt said that it was a half a degree. This was in October of 2014. He said it was a half a degree Celsius that we triggered those self-reinforcing feedback loops. They're already behind us. Finally, a few years ago, the IPCC itself admitted that because of an overheated ocean, we have entered the arena of irreversible climate change. They admitted that we have caused an overheated ocean and therefore climate change is irreversible. They also admitted in a separate report global warming of 1.5 degrees. They said that, this is directly quoting from that special report, global warming of 1.5 degrees, quote, "These global level rates of human-driven change far exceed the rates of change driven by geophysical or biosphere forces that have altered the Earth system trajectory in the past. Even abrupt geophysical events do not approach current rates of human-driven change." That's a direct quote from the IPCC's October 8th, 2018 report, Global Warming of 1.5 degrees. So the IPCC itself admits that we are in the midst of abrupt, irreversible climate change. They have reached those conclusions within the last few years, and yet I never read about it. This should be in the news every day. This should be on every radio station, on every newspaper, every single day, that we have crossed the threshold into the arena of abrupt, irreversible climate change, more abrupt than naturally occurring geophysical driven events. And I never hear anything about it. Instead, all I hear is that the information I present must be wrong. Humans are special. We'll get through this. We always have. We always survive the hard times. All this nonsense. And all that aside, Andrew Glickson, in his October 2020 book, The Event Horizon, concluded that we were above 2 watts per square meter of energy striking the surface, and therefore we already passed 2 degrees C. We're already above 2 degrees C. Again, I never hear about this. All I hear is that we need to keep the temperature of the planet below 1.5 degrees C or below 2 degrees C, and we pass both of those numbers. The situation is unbelievably dire. We cannot reduce emissions with the mirror framework that I already mentioned, but we can reflect back incoming sunlight and therefore prevent further warming. The mirror framework will have to be accompanied by other means. It is at this point an emergency measure, such as hitting the brakes when you're going too fast and you're about to hit a wall. But there are other things that have to be done in association with mir.org. And I'm presenting this message. I continue to submit to essentially every interview offered to me, because if we don't do something right now, we are dooming ourselves to human extinction, and also to the extinction of all life on Earth due to the very rapid rate of environmental change that will accompany our extinction and will occur in the aftermath of our extinction. So it's a horrible, dire situation, and we need to get the word out so that people understand what is going on. For me, this is the equivalent of, up until the 1960s, it was considered perfectly legitimate, appropriate, even ethical for medical doctors to not tell their patients when they had a terminal condition. That was good at that time, through the 1960s. And then at some point, the medical ethicists decided if somebody has a high probability of dying as a result of their current medical condition, then the doctor must tell that person. They have an obligation to tell that person that they are expected to die in a week or a month or 2 months or 6 months or 2 years or whatever it is. We're in a very similar situation. I don't see any way out of this except for the immediate implementation of the mirror reflection framework. And that might not even be enough, but I don't want to give up on it. So I would like us to immediately, if not sooner, implement a framework that might actually do some good. And so that's why I continue promulgating this message. Are you familiar with the aerosol masking effect by chance?
I read it, the article that you, or the link that you sent me. And in fact, the next question I had was about it. And I'm sorry, I have put my video off just to conserve some bandwidth.
That's fine.
So that I can talk to you longer.
Sure.
And my question was, so we created a problem by industrial emissions, and now is it going to be a problem if we reduce the emissions, because aerosols will come down and which will have an adverse effect? I would like to understand more about it. This is a news which I think is a new news to me, and here in India I consider myself sufficiently motivated to read into whatever is coming out on the climate space at least.
I think the aerosol masking effect is the best kept secret in all of climate science. I didn't know about it until I read a paper by James Hansen and colleagues in December of 2011. So I probably read that paper in January 2012, I don't recall. And they reported that the level of aerosol masking was quite high, and James Hansen has said in many interviews since then that it takes 5 days for the particulates, the aerosols, to fall out of the atmosphere. So in other words, industrial activity produces not only the greenhouse gases that we all know about that serve to warm up the planet, Industrial activity also produces these particles, frequently called aerosols, that block incoming sunlight, that act as something of an umbrella so that the earth doesn't warm to begin with. The sun's rays don't ever strike the earth. These aerosols are in the atmosphere and they reflect incoming solar radiation. The aerosol masking effect is quite high. In fact, the latest paper that reports the numbers on the topic, that I've seen anyway, was published in June 15th, 2021 in Nature Communications. Nature Communications is an open access journal, so anybody can read it. It's titled Significant Underestimation of Radiative Forcing by Aerosol Cloud Interactions Derived from Satellite-Based Methods. It's written by 4 authors, and again, it came out June 15th, 2021. It indicates, and I'm going to quote here from the abstract, by accounting for the sampling biases, and here they're referring to previous papers that have underestimated the impact of these aerosols. By accounting for the sampling biases, the magnitude of aerosol cloud interactions increases by 55% globally, 133% over land, and 33% over water. These are enormous numbers. If we take a conservative approach and assume that Andrew Glickson is right, that we have crossed the 2 degrees C Rubicon, let's just say we're at 2 degrees C right now, 55% increase within a few days of terminating industrial activity will cause the temperature to rise to at least 3.1 degrees C, above the 1750 baseline. The rapidity of change, the rapidity of environmental change, is perhaps the most important component of climate change or any other change to the environment. Organisms have a very difficult time adjusting to a rapid rate of environmental change. That's why Strone and Bradshaw, in their November 13th, 2018 article in the open access peer-reviewed journal Scientific Reports, concluded that with a 5 or 6 degree global average temperature rise, we would cause the extinction of all life on Earth. All life on Earth as a result of a relatively rapid rate of environmental change. In this case, relatively rapid increase in global average temperature. But they were looking at the long term. They were looking at the outcome of environmental change on the ability of organisms to reproduce. So they're looking at a generation or so out. What, to my knowledge, nobody has looked at carefully from a scholarly perspective except me and my 2 most recent peer-reviewed articles, and in the latter case with collaborators, 2 collaborators from Europe. What almost nobody else looks at is the importance of the rapid rate of environmental change on the ability of habitat to be retained with humans and with other animals, but particularly with humans, because that's, after all, what most of us are interested in, is our own habitat. I'm sorry, I just downloaded everything in my brain in 12 minutes, so I'm sorry about that.
And I am so thankful to you that you did that, and that's exactly what I think there are a lot of people like me who really want, at least the first thing that they want is to have a clear picture as to what is it that is going on in this climate change, global warming, and save this planet and do this and plant trees and save your forests. And I have started asking myself this question lately. Is it enough for me to sit in this forest and come here, appreciate it, ask people not to cut the trees here, and ask people to be coming together to plant more trees, and let's have our forests richer, rather than have in the government records have a place registered as a forest, but in reality it's nothing but a mission mash of shrubs. at the most, and you hardly find any trees worth being called as trees. So, uh, though all the information that you have downloaded, it's not a very happy information, but it definitely is the right information. So, my next question to you uh, is there any worth in these activities called increase your forest cover, plant more trees, and so on and so forth? Are we past that, or does it still hold some value? It can help us. How do you think about it?
Well, Edward Abbey is a writer who spent most of his life in the southwestern United States, and he had a tremendous influence on me. I began reading him when I was in my late teens and early 20s, and read all of his books. And he points out that, with a quote, action is the antidote to despair. Action is the antidote to despair. And I agree, absolutely. And sometimes we don't know what the outcome will be. I think that planting more trees in most places is a good idea. I pointed out in a peer-reviewed paper 3 or 4 years ago that depending upon where those trees were planted, it might do more harm than good. But almost nobody is planting any trees anywhere. So I think if people are willing to do that, that's probably a good thing. Is it enough? No, of course not. Nothing at this point seems like it is going to be enough. But does that mean we should just roll over and die? No, I don't think so. I have a dear friend who, and I won't say her name because she didn't give me permission to say her name in this interview, because I didn't ask her. She used to be an anti-nuclear activist who would go to protests and try to get nuclear power plants to shut down. And then it became clear to her that, one, it wasn't working, and two, even under the best case scenario, it will take at least half a century to shut down safely all the nuclear power plants in the world. That's if we start right now. It's going to take at least a half a century to shut down all the nuclear power plants in the world that pose a major existential threat, because ionizing radiation strips away the ozone in the stratosphere that keeps us and all the other organisms on Earth from sunburning in a matter of minutes. So she realized that she was wasting her time against this industry that simply was not going to go away. So what she does now, and what she's been doing for several years, is working with homeless people, working directly with people on the streets, trying to get them into homes. She lives in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. It's a relatively populated area, and she spends her time now protesting at City Hall, at city council meetings, pointing out how horribly houseless people are being treated, and trying to improve the lives of those who are living without a house by getting them shelter of some kind, by providing food for them. So she spends many hours every day trying to improve the lives of these people. She doesn't have to do that. She doesn't get paid for it. It's strictly a volunteer endeavor. She realized that it's too late for saving habitat for humans on this planet as a result of the meltdown of nuclear power plants. So she decided to make her volunteer efforts more personal, more intimate, more involved with individual human beings and improving their lot for however long we have on this planet. And I think that's a great model for all of us. If every one of us can do something to try to improve the lot of somebody who has been less beneficial than us in our lives, I think that would be just wonderful. Many of us have enjoyed enormous privilege, and we can turn to other people and provide some kind of help, of activities that any of us can do that improve the lives of the people around us. That's what we can do.
monsoons are about to hit India in the next month and a half, or at the most quarter to 2 months. And there are a lot of hills here where I'm sitting. There used to be deep forests, but they are looking literally bald. Uh, Hardly any shrubs, and all of them are almost dry. So I think I am talking to people here to at least use this monsoon and replant these areas with this intention that maybe in a year, 2 year, or maybe in 3 monsoons, we can have a green looking hill, which was always green for thousands of years, just that in the last 3 to 4 decades, we stripped these hills of these forests. So I am still motivated after listening to you. At least it might help. Not doing anything will definitely not help. My last question to you, and I wanna draw your attention to this ocean, because the place where I'm sitting, it's very far away from ocean, so people don't have any recollection as to how beneficial those ocean and that those water currents, so these El Nino and La Ninas and these ENSOs are. But it seems, and this question is from the discussion that I heard you last. Uh, there's a lot of concern about Arctic melting faster than it should, and then there's some strange thing happening between El Nino and La Nina, and ENSO is kind of reappearing. If I'm not wrong, it was there in 2015, 2014, and then it's relapsing back again. So, I mean, please help me understand so that I can make my readers understand how this ocean's complex mechanism has been helping us living on the land, and are the oceans also getting tired, and they are also losing hope, and we are moving in the wrong direction? I mean, what is the situation there?
Well, the oceans are dying, as predicted in a peer-reviewed article that was included in the link that I sent you. So that was predicted to occur in the 2020s, and sure enough, we're in the 2020s, and it's happening. We're in the midst of a mass extinction event, so of course that's among the things that's happening. The El Nino Southern Oscillation, when it shows up in its ENSO phase as opposed to its La Nina phase, it releases heat and carbon dioxide from the world's oceans. So the ocean acts as something of a battery. It soaks in all this carbon dioxide, all these greenhouse gases and heat, and absorbs all that heat, and then during an El Nino phase, it releases that heat and releases the greenhouse gases at the same time. So then all this heat that has been stored in the battery known as the ocean spills out into the atmosphere and warms up the atmosphere quite abruptly. You're absolutely correct. It was 2014, 2015 when we last had a major El Nino event. And these El Nino events tend to come in a cycle of every 7 to 10 years. So we're on the verge. We almost certainly are on the cusp of another El Nino. Will it happen this fall? I think so, but we can't say with absolute certainty yet. So I think that the El Nino probably will begin this fall, this autumn in the northern hemisphere, which means in 5 or 6 months. But maybe not. Maybe we'll be granted another year, and that burst of heat and that burst of greenhouse gases released from the ocean will be put off for another year. In the spirit of good news, we did just get some very good news from the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California, a branch of the United States Navy. They have developed a technique for forecasting whether we will have an ice-free Arctic this year. And on April 6th, their report came out for this year, for September, and they have concluded there's essentially a 0% chance we will have an ice-free Arctic Ocean this year. So that's good news, because the rate of environmental change when we transition from this color, from even a relatively small amount of ice floating on the Arctic Ocean, when we go from there to this color, this dark blue of the blue ocean, that is going to trigger an environmental change unlike anything that has happened in the history of civilization on Earth. The very rapid rate of environmental change in the wake of transitioning to an ice-free Arctic Ocean will be very, very fast. So I can't imagine a situation that habitat for humans will remain in the wake of the first ice-free Arctic Ocean since the Eemian, long before civilizations developed on this planet. So the Arctic ice that remains floating on the Arctic Ocean is critically important for maintaining a cooling effect and therefore maintaining habitat for our species on this planet. When that's gone or nearly gone, then I would say that we are in real trouble as a species.
So, thank you very much, Professor McPherson. I would like to request permission, though I have a lot of information from you in this 37 minutes already, which I think is good enough for an article, 500 to 600 words. I'll be publishing it in the form of an interview. I would like to take your permission to maybe publish it as if you are talking to us in first person.
Yes,
And,
sure.
and
That's fine.
you know, and if needed, I may use information that you might have already said in some of your interviews available on YouTube and so on and so forth. But I can't even tell you how happy I am to speak to you and how worried I am about this earth and this whole mess that our fathers and forefathers have created, and that we are only contributing in that, not for good, but only for bad.
Right.
And hope that there is some hope down the aisle. Thank
Right.
you very much.
Right. Thank you. Now the Mere people, you can find their website at meer.org, MEER.org,
Yeah.
and they're having an event this Sunday afternoon here in the eastern United States.
Okay.
They're having an event open to anybody to participate in. So if you want to find out more about what's going on with the Mere Reflection Framework, that's the place to go. I think it will only last about an hour from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. local time, and it's now just a little bit after 2 p.m. local time here. So it'll be ended about now, and that's Sunday, so in 2 days.
Yeah. I think I will be there, sir. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
You're welcome, and thank you for the opportunity to chat today. I very much appreciate your ability your willingness to be open to information that nobody wants to hear, including me. So thank you for that.
This is the first time I'm talking to you, sir, and I hope and wish I can get more opportunities in the future.
That would be great. Thank you very much, sir.
You take care of yourself, sir.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.